Greetings and salutations today, Thomas.
Well, all that good stuff back to you, Betsy.
Yes, that's right. Now, we're going to talk about Syria. Lots of people have been writing questions all over the place, so I don't really care where you start. Just get started and let's talk about Syria.
Well, do you remember any of those pressing questions?
No, because some people are like totally concerned that Trump is going to go and bomb the hell out of them. We're going to start World War III. Others are saying, oh, he's just using the art of the deal. It's just all over the place, so that's why we're here, to get some clarity.
Well, okay. We did some research on this to make sure that we knew what we were talking about. We've said some of these things before, but some of these things are somewhat new. The intelligence coming out of Syria basically all comes from Britain. Now, you've heard the Russians come out and say that point blank, and then people laughed at them. Here's the truth of the matter. Both of the first two gas bombings were reported by the same organizations. The World Health Organization, which is the most corrupt group that you could ever listen to, and then there's people who are paying these white helmets. But the white helmets are part of what is called the Union of Medical Relief Organizations. And this one specifically is for Syria. And if you look it up, it goes back to a company in France. But if you look closer, it goes back to two people who started a charity in England. And then if you look closely, you'll find that these organizations receive money from America under the auspices of the USAID, basically our foreign aid group, that gives away $27 billion a year. So we are funding these people who are British spies on the ground at a company called 63, capital SIXTY, and then the number 3, 63. 63, along with this union of medical relief organizations, actually works as an intelligence agency for the United States government. So we are hiring, again, British intelligence. Christopher Steele was a British intelligence. He created the Trump dossier. We do this all the time. So anyway, they're bogus. 63 is now, we can go into great detail to prove that what we're saying is true, but Serco owns Cassie, CACI, and Cassie owns 63. Now, Serco is owned and is operated by two people who are knighted by the Queen herself, and it's basically the leftover piece of the monopoly of GE once it parceled up all of RCA, and then the British bought it, and now they do all this work for us, and they lie to us.
Take a breath, Thomas, because you've just spouted off a bunch of letters that people are going to go, whoa, I've never heard of this. 63, USAID, Serco. And so let me just frame this for folks. We've been doing, as you know, research into senior executive service. We found out that they are really the shadow government that's operating things in Washington. I mean, we thought it was we the people, but no, it's this shadow government. And as we've explored that, of course, we have to move into Serco, which is a huge conglomeration of all kinds of entities that actually do the services for our government. We don't do that either. And then as Thomas and the conclave, and yes, there is a conclave, continue their research into Serco, they found a lot of connections that we'll be showing you into the Crown. And it's not what you might have already seen on some websites that are heavily into the Serco SES research. I mean, we certainly applaud them for what they are doing. But where our conclave is going is in a totally different, it's just a different way. So I know that's fresh on your mind. So when you're looking at Syria, it sounds like you are seeing this connection right back in to the British Crown.
Well, we said this from the first two bombings. It was a British staged event so that they could move mercenaries. And when we say mercenaries, we're talking about, basically soldiers that were Al-Qaeda, they were ISIS, they al-Nusra, they whatever the name is. So here's what really happened. 1,200 of them were in Douma, and they were the last resistance right outside of Damascus. And this is the thing that needed to be ended. So what happened? Now you're going to be a little shocked by this, but I need to tell the backstory, and then I'll tell you why 63 and these fake organizations on the ground giving us intelligence are all lies. And the reason the first time Trump probably didn't know this, and this time he figured it out because he got rid of certain key people who go with the same people to give us our intelligence when it's not even Americans and it's not our American military. So Trump followed American military intelligence last time, and he simply bombed the air station that they said that the gas was, that the planes left from that dropped the gas in the gas attack, the second gas attack. Well, this third gas attack, there wasn't such a thing. And right before that, let's remember what happened. Good old Benjamin Netanyahu, who, by the way, should be put in jail for his crimes. We need to get him out of office, folks, if there's anything you can do to help with that. Because he's a war hawk, and he is doing terribly illegal things beyond your imagination. I could go into great detail. But the point is, he sent 2 fighters to the edge of Lebanon, and he fired upon what was becoming an Iranian air station, and he blew up some of their best helicopters, fighter helicopters. Now, why did he do that? Because the troops, the 1,200 resistance, the 1,200 anti-Assad troops that were in Duma, that they couldn't seem to get rid of because they were so embedded, at least 1,200 of them, needed to escape. They needed to exit. That's the only thing you should be noticing here. The gas pictures are all fake. Take a look at them. They killed those people, but they killed those people a long time ago in Idlib. So none of that happened. And what you're being reported, what happened in Duma, this is the only thing that happened. Netanyahu blew up the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's new air station they were working on, and their best fighter attack helicopters. Why did they go after those helicopters? Because those are going to be the ones that would have come into play to go after the retreating 1,200 insurgents who were fighting against Assad. They all escaped. Under the aegis, under the auspices, under the lie, under the false flag of a gas attack, which immediately upon this gas attack coming out, there's only one hospital in Duma, and they went there and they took pictures. They said they put these bodies in the basement. No, they didn't. Look at people have analyzed these and shown that these pictures are old. These pictures are people not being gassed. They were, in fact, over-injected with opium, and that explains all of their medical conditions you see there. The people who were handling them didn't have gloves on. They would have been contaminated. It's all a big, fat, faking false flag lie that there was a gas attack. But Trump wanted to show who he was by dropping those first 59 missiles on the Syrian air base that our best military intelligence told us, supposedly, is where the fighter planes were launched to drop the second gas attack. Well, there was none of that in the third gas attack. So, but look right beforehand. They blew up the very things that would have been needed to go after the 1,200. Why? Because here's the sad reality. Sorry, Benjamin Netanyahu, but everybody knows, because you can take a look at the pictures, that so many of ISIS have tattoos that show that they were in the Russian military. They were defectors who then worked for the Mossad and then became rogue Israeli Mossad Russians who spoke perfect Arabic because they were from Chechnya and other places where they were raised with that language, so they do not have an accent. That is who these insurgents are. The rest have all left in American-made Huey helicopters that took them first off to Somalia and later to Yemen. Now we have some of the last insurgents that they were already bombing them. They were devastating that area, and the insurgents needed to get out. And the one thing that we do know is that according to President Trump, his military advisors told him that the area was completely surrounded. Well, why was it surrounded? It was surrounded to carry off the false flag, and then the 1,200 who were surrounding it then left, and they were not attacked because they were busy trying to deal with the international outrage of a gas attack. It's just like the gas attack in England. These things are so stupid that we kick Russians out of our country. Fine, no problem, kick the Russians out. If you think any foreign diplomat is not a spy, then you're naive. Of course they're all spies. Kick them all out, especially if, in fact, they don't really do anything. So who cares about that? But when they say that they're going after an ex-Russian spy with a gas attack in England, that's just such, you can see through that, it's silly. To say there's another gas attack in Syria, which would then call Trump to push the button, let me point something out to you. The airspace around Syria was cleared by French and British warnings to the Russians and to the Turkish and to Cyprus and to everyone. It wasn't America who gave the warnings. Trump was playing with their minds when he said, basically, I could launch a bunch more missiles. And then he asked his military, what would be the target, you dimwits? Last target you gave me, it was a complete failure. And so then they said, well, we really don't know. We don't have any intelligence on the ground. We have to go through British, the group called 63, but also other ones. The World Health Organization is, in fact, an intelligence agency. The Union of Medical Relief Organizations is an intelligence agency. They're actually owned by the same people. And that's what I was saying, the long list of all those three-letter agencies and acronyms. These people are trying to hide. We said this from the beginning. Trump was given bad intelligence before, but because the person he was trusting was a liar. But he didn't know he was a liar completely. He was working through the same old channels that we work through instead of listening to our own intelligence. Now, we don't only have 2,000 troops and they're aiding the Kurds and there are special forces. And they're not only aiding the Kurds in northern Syria, they're protecting them because as soon as they leave, Erdogan's going to kill them all. What don't people understand about who Erdogan is? We should get him out of NATO before he starts World War III. And basically, he would be happy if there was a World War III. He's always agitating all of these things. Where's the Turkish intelligence? Where's intelligence from somebody who actually speaks the language? And why are we Americans paying British intelligence agencies to give us false information, and then they cleared the airspace so Trump could launch some cruise missiles at them? That's silly. Let me tell you the other thing that's going on. Macron is a total globalist. When he lost his deal with Iran, and remember, we seem to forget that the British Petroleum stole their oil from Iran. France got in on it in the end. Now France wants a pipeline coming out of northern Iran, coming through them under their aegis, under their control. Well, that didn't work out too well because when Trump was elected, the Iran deal, which gave them so much money that the Iran Revolutionary Guard, Hezbollah, which then fed Hamas and the Palestinian, what used to be called the Palestinian Liberation Organization, but the Palestinian Authority, all of those groups are being given relief as well as weapons from money that Obama gave to Iran. Well, when that happened and we lifted the sanctions, China and Russia came in to Iran so powerfully that they have control now of their oil fields in the country, the majority of it. And so France has been unfortunately cut out of the deal. And France is very mad about that. So now France wants there to be an Israeli attack against Iran so they can get back what they want, which is the pipeline coming out of the north, which would cut off the pipeline that is coming out of Iran going through Iraq, which is now Iranian controlled. I mean, if you really want to just be quite blunt about it, Iraq, we lost everything. And Al-Qaeda's gone, yes, ISIS is gone, but so what? Iran controls Iraq, and Hezbollah is giving more relief services than the U.S. ever did. And now the issue is the Kurds, because that's where the Iraqi pipeline goes through what used to be Kurdistan, or what is the edge of Turkey. Well, they want to cut them out. And the Kurds are they want to put a tax on the oil coming through them, just like that is the reason we put sanctions on Russia, because the Ukrainians, they were going to put a tax on the two major oil pipes coming through Russia that came from Kazakhstan, which is some of the greatest oil reserves in the world, and Uzbekistan. And it's basically putting taxes on the pipelines that cause some of these wars. So that's why France is lying. And they're using a French organization that's supposed to be supporting Syria, which is really created in Britain. And the reasons the Britain cleared the airspace, they'd like to see this confusion too, because then they could get a little bit more of the oil. And we have done some research in the last days, which is just shocking, that the way that America gives aid, we are giving $250 million to Israel right now through the I could use a bunch of acronyms.
No, but don't do that, because that research right now is still underway, Thomas, and we don't want to tip anyone off because we've got to go in and, do some preservation.
Well,
okay?
basically, what we've talked about, genie oil.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, well, we
You can talk
probably
about
dug
that.
those oil wells for them because we gave them $250 million in 2017 that I saw, and probably much more before. We haven't looked it up. Billions of dollars given through this thing called the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, which is linked to the United States aid, which is foreign aid, and the World Bank. And so what we found out here is while the war is going on, we're digging for oil so that Rupert Murdoch, James Woosley, Nathan, no, I don't remember which Rockefeller it is. I mean, which Rothschild it is, but Rothschild, Dick Cheney, and others.
The usual suspects.
The usual suspects are getting rich.
Okay. All right. So the mainstream media that's bought and paid for by this collaboration of criminal thugs continues to espouse the need for going to war. Now, folks, we don't need to go to war anymore. I hope you understand by now that these wars are for the banksters, for the money, for the oil, and they use us as the excuse. We send our sons and daughters over there to be killed. We grab the children, the refugees. We use their body parts. We use them for human trafficking. You need to wake up. You got to stop watching the mainstream media propaganda and look and see what's really happening. Do you want all of the children in this world to have to face World War III?
That's the issue, Betsy. You've nailed it.
Well, I know you do a lot of talking to explain it, but let's just cut through the chase. We need to call this out as BS.
Remember, Michael Flynn got fired because of this, and they tried to bring charges against him because they said that he tried to stop Obama from putting 10,000 troops in Turkey to then enter into Syria. Well, General Michael Flynn was against that, and that was the reason he was kicked off of Obama's National Security Council. And then he went and he was a lobbyist for Erdogan for Turkey, and he didn't report that. Big mistake. And then he, does talks on RT, so do many people.
But war
I could name some of them.
War
but
is
anyway.
a business. It's like, any business. You got an ice cream stand, you want to make a profit. You're a military industrial complex, you've got to sell something, so you create your customers. You don't care what conflict they're causing in the world and the instability of the world. You just want to sell what you are making and make a profit. Then you make that profit, you got to put it someplace, and then you've got the banksters all involved. This web can be brought down, and we're going to show you step by step the corruption. We want you to follow along. It's very important now. You cannot put your head in the sand anymore. Pay attention so that we can collectively around the world take down this evil cabal.
Had Trump not been elected and Obama's idea of putting 10,000 troops in Turkey to go into Syria had not been lobbied against and fought against by Michael Flynn himself until he slowed it down, one of the last things Obama wanted to do was still put those troops in the ground because that would have started World War III. He was going to put them just a few miles from where the Russians are. And the Russians are well equipped there, and they have, I don't even want to go into how negative it is, but certainly they have tactical nuclear weapons there all over the place. So, and then it was in the plan of the intelligence community written by James Clapper that said that it didn't name Damascus, but they described it quite exactly. So they were going to bomb Damascus. Well, what would have just happened if we would have believed the gas attack and Trump would have gone with bad suggestions to bomb Damascus? That would have indeed been the signal to the Muslim world that their Messiah, Muhammad al-Mahdi, is come to take control of the world and turn it all Muslim. And then that would have also, because Christ comes along at the same time, so then the Jesuits would have got in on it, the Catholics, and even some fundamental Christians, and then the Jews would have got in on it because they would have, of course, assumed that it's their Messiah that's returning. And this is World War III, right outside of Damascus, on the fields of Armageddon, and that is what is at stake. And you've nailed it on the head, and I don't want to make light of this. The 2,000 troops who were there are all training troops. They're all specialists. They're all training the Kurds. Well, the Kurds have been the only effective thing happening in Syria. They're the most effective fighters there are. And as I say, we're there to protect them. When we move out, you can expect that Turkey will be dropped from NATO because they will, in fact, simply take over the northern part of the far northwestern part of Iraq. because they will cut off the taxes on the pipeline. This is all well known. That's the reason that Erdogan siphoned off the oil from both of the pipelines that were working at one point in Syria, and then in the end, his own relatives were making private profit off of going and taking the oil, crossing from Turkey into Syria, and then selling it to the Israelis. This is how complicated the situation is. It isn't just what you see on the surface. It's about the Brits and the French wanting their lands back. They want the resources and they need chaos. And of course, they need a central bank, and then they need to finance the war. As you pointed out, it's the warlord bankers and brokers.
And they've been doing that for hundreds of years, but they've kept us effectively asleep. But, starting with the Sandy Hook false flag, people started waking up, and now they call out these false flags very quickly. In fact, it was within minutes that our alternative media collaborators were pointing out that this was a false flag, that they had seen nothing that indicated that it actually had happened. And as one astute reader of the American intelligence media pointed out, why are we so concerned about a false flag of that has occurred using these lethal chemicals when any of us in America can step outside, look up in the sky, and see these chemtrails falling on us? We don't know what is up there, and we don't know who's in those planes. But I'm telling you, that to me, that's an act of war too. And what we're going to find out, Thomas, I'll bet you we're going to find out you can backtrack all these planes, and you're going to find out they have Serco connections and the Brits.
Well, we already know, yes, you're quite right, that the geoengineering, that's not passenger planes.
No, well, of course not. And people know that.
And so cloud seeding has been going on since the 60s.
But I'm talking about this stuff that they're just pouring from the sky that we don't know what it is, and it could be poisoning us.
The particles, no matter whether they be ash or even water or all the different ones that you've heard of, which I can name, which will depress you, once they get into the air, they can be heated up by Doppler. And there's no area above America that is not completely permeated by Doppler. Who do you think owns those Doppler stations? Not America, not our weather service. Oh no, they're owned by, in the majority of cases, you got it, the British.
Yes, and you know what? So if our military is so concerned about protecting us from these chemicals and chemical warfare, they need to shoot these things out of the sky. The military, not individual citizens, but our military needs to take these planes down right now, and America needs to be a no-fly zone for all this geochemical, geoengineering. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, yes, because those planes are probably, they're drones, more than likely. They don't even have any.
No, I've seen pictures where you've got people in them with all these big tanks full of stuff, and they're spraying this on us. We're like bugs to them. They want to kill us. Well, I think it's like, that would be your enemy. So why aren't we taking these planes down?
Though I think some of the pictures I've seen were the prototypes where the people are all smiling and they've changed planes that do one thing into, these chemtrail planes. And now I believe that their production, I mean, you can see that they're not even marked. Just take a close look at the ones that they see putting out the greatest ones outside the window of a regular airliner. They're not marked.
They don't do it out the window.
No, someone in a plane looking out the window have taken pictures of these planes, and they're unmarked.
But the point is, if the military and our intelligence community is so concerned about this, then why aren't we taking these things out of the skies here in America?
And with gas attacks in Syria, why haven't the Russians and the Syrians say they've cleaned it out, but then of course they say that the insurgents constantly make this gas. Well, why would the insurgents make the gas when they really can't launch their barrel gas mechanisms that they have? And so you see them also put into small mortar launchers. Those aren't going to do a lot of damage. So you have to ask the question, why is anyone even making this gas? Who in the world is even interested in Syria for making this type of archaic gas when you can make much more efficient gases? And let's remember, who created sarin nerve gas? That's us. That's our leftover sarin nerve gas. That's the reason they use that. The chlorine, they get the chlorine from any industrial sources. But then they make these barrel bombs, right? Well, the barrel bombs, they can be dropped from a helicopter generally, but the Syrian army do not have warheads or missiles with chemical weapons on them, and they've been examined again and again. So if they have them, no one's found them. They destroyed the places that they were making them, because yes, they were making them before. And I am not saying that Assad is a good man. He and his father are two of the worst criminals in the Middle East. They're right up there with what Netanyahu is attempting to be himself, which is just a butcher. So we need to stop Netanyahu. And we need to stop believing nonsense that comes from British sources. I don't care. And we need to say there's no more Five Eyes.
And may
we don't
say,
share intelligence with them anymore.
And again, when we say Brits, we are not talking about the good people of the United Kingdom, because there are good people everywhere. It's the corrupt governments that are doing this, and these corporations that even exist above the governments. And we're going to be explaining that over the next month.